Today on Inspirational People, Inspirational Stories, I'm joined by Andrew Funk. Andrew is the founder of Homeless Entrepreneur, a social enterprise that helps people transition out of homelessness by giving them the tools, support, and opportunities they need to rebuild their lives. The organization offers a holistic program focused on inclusion, empowerment, and economic independence for those ready and willing to participate. By tapping into social networks, technology, and blockchain, it helps people regain their confidence, sharpen their professional skills, and re-enter society as active contributing citizens. The mission and vision is that a smart city without homelessness is a smarter city. Having met and shared the stage with Andrew a couple of weeks ago, I have to say he really is a true inspiration and a pleasure to have on the show. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Doug, thank you for the invitation, and I really appreciate the opportunity to share this moment with you and your audience.
It's an absolute pleasure. I got to spend some quality time with you a couple of weeks ago when we did the Start Over Summit in Dublin with Sir Marco Robinson, who's also been on the show. And I have to say, it was an absolute pleasure to get to know you, find out what you're doing in terms of a homeless entrepreneur. And it really is inspiring. Your story, when I heard you speak on stage, was phenomenal. And I'd love you just to tell the audience of how you ended up. You were a business entrepreneur doing pretty well, and then suddenly the business went under, and you ended up on the street because at the same time your marriage went under as well. So tell us a little bit about that and what it was like to be on the street as a homeless person.
Well, first of all, as an entrepreneur, you're always preparing for the best, right? But you also need to prepare for the worst. And in that case, I wasn't exactly prepared to experience homelessness. We raised 300,000 euros, and the project was to bridge entrepreneurs and investors. Unfortunately, the business partners spent the funds on salaries for the first 6 months. I saw 1,200 of that. And obviously, the economic strain caused stress on the relationship that I had. My first son was born. He was 9 months at the time. And between one thing and the other, it's difficult to keep a relationship going when you have economic stress, right? That's one of the main reasons why people can break up, and breakups are one of the main reasons too why people become homeless. So I had to go through a very hard time, and I remember the first night I was homeless. I woke up and I heard my son crying in the other room, if you will, but he wasn't there, right? So psychologically, it's very, very difficult, and also as a father, you want to contribute to your kids. So not being able to do that economically and not have the time as well, because you need the time to make money and vice versa. It's trying to figure out, what comes first, the chicken or the egg, but trying to get your life together again so that way you can help yourself. And ultimately, after going through that experience, I wanted to help others. So that's why I created an organization called Homeless Entrepreneur that's been around for almost 10 years. And we empower people made a potential out of homelessness.
Wow. And I'm sure there's a massive difference between knowing and supporting homelessness and actually living through it. How did your experience shape the vision and values of Homeless Entrepreneur?
Well, at the beginning, I knew very little about homelessness. It wasn't my focus, right? Um, I probably thought the same that most people do, which is mental health and substance abuse issues, which is really the loud minority. Um, and I had to understand the different types of homelessness, episodic, transitional, chronic, and hidden. And so as I entered homelessness, I studied it like I study anything I do. And that's when I got a better grasp of what it meant. And so I've been studying what homelessness is, what it isn't, as well for the last decade, more or less. And we learn a lot. We have a lot to learn. But what we've really identified is how we can add value to those that are willing and able to participate in the process. When I was experiencing that situation, I didn't know where to go. You couldn't go to like a Red Cross or any of these organizations because they have a very strict schedule, and I was working probably 16, 17 hours a day. So I couldn't go to a specific place for a food bank, or I couldn't get there at 8 o'clock before the lights went out at 9 and things like that. So I didn't fit with the system because the system that exists in my opinion, consolidates the situation. So it helps you get a little bit better, but then makes you stick to that situation. And it should be a trampoline that helps you get back on your feet properly. So my experience helped me understand how to help others in my situation. And then throughout the years, obviously the range of people we can help has increased. Yeah, thanks to our understanding and our network, which is amazing that helps people from around the world too.
Wow. And what do you think helped you most in rebuilding your life mentally, emotionally, and even practically?
Well, I would say my current wife, right?
Oh,
Because without that stability in your life, you can't you can't focus on what you need to. Also, you don't have the bumpers, if you will, to make sure that you stay straight and focused on what you need to do, right? And sometimes in life, like bowling, when you're getting started, you probably need those bumpers, even if you don't want them, right? To make
mhm.
sure it doesn't get stuck in the sides. So I think that stability at home allowed me to have a clearer focus of how I can contribute value to my life and others, and also a reminder of what's important, right? And I would say the family is the most important aspect of your life, the core. And then obviously you should have a relationship with work that contributes. The challenge is when you're so far in the hole, how do you balance that when really there's no balance in your life? So I think having someone by your side that supports, loves, and respects what you're doing is really important.
Yeah, I totally agree. Having gone through divorce myself and a marriage breakdown, it can be really tough emotionally because you haven't got the kids around you, you haven't got that support around you, and even I didn't have the same circumstance as you, but at the same time, it takes away from the focus and confidence that you have to be able to deliver in business side because everything is interlinked in terms of life, in terms of that. That's why they say happy wife, happy life, I think is what something that's.
Another thing is, and most people don't care about your personal situation, right? Like you just have to go and deliver like life is good.
Yeah.
And that's hard sometimes when you're struggling, and if your core is not okay, it really makes it challenging to deliver professionally when inside you're not okay. So you have to create a very hard shell so that way you can kind of deflect a lot of the toxic aspects of the life that you're living and healing. As you know, healing is very important. So you have to find a way that helps you heal without hurting those around you. That's important. And then finding a way to grow together, right? So I would say the unfortunate situation that I went through has made me a humbler, better person. It's not something I would have asked for, but in hindsight, it gave me a better perspective of what's important in my life and how I can contribute to society as well.
Lovely. Yeah. And how long were you on the street for?
Well, the homelessness that I experienced was basically like 9 months going in and 9 months going out. It was like two pregnancies, right?
Mm.
So I experienced hidden homelessness. So I was going from one place to the next, not knowing how long I was going to be there. Not I would get to random places at like just say I would wake up and leave at 6 in the morning, and I would get back around midnight just because I wanted to leave before anybody else woke up, and I want to get back when everybody was sleeping. But even then, your your absence bothered people,
Mm.
right? So not knowing how long you can be, or even knowing that like you have 2 weeks to stay at a place and then you have to go to another place and you don't know where that other place is and you don't have any money to pay for it and there's no way you're going to move money fast enough to make it happen. It's this constant stress of trying to please others economically when you can't, and realistically that you're not going to be able to, but you have to accept certain terms. So I think that's very hard because it makes you feel like you can't add value to something as simple as a place to stay, which is supposed to be like the core of your well-being.
Yeah. And if you could go back now and speak to yourself at your lowest point, what would you say?
Just stick to your guns, your core values. you know, um, because no one really was that supportive of what I was doing, right? Because you have to keep in mind, imagine you telling your father, like I told mine, that I was experiencing homelessness, and my way of getting out was to build an organization to help other homeless people. Can you imagine what your father would probably tell you?
Yeah, yeah.
That's probably what my dad said. So, um, one thing I learned is when you lose almost everything, that means nobody can take anything away from you.
Mm.
Right? So I was focused on what I believed was the right thing to do. I stuck to my guns on that topic. I've had to change some things and adapt, but I truly believe that the value I can bring to society is what I'm doing, obviously improving. But I obviously had to listen to my dad say, get a day job, work in corporate. Get a real job is the real term that I heard, right? And that just wasn't what I wanted with my life, right? And also I believed that I could do it. Obviously, it's a long, windy road, right? Like the Beatles said. But I do think you have to create the path that you want to have. Otherwise, you're just working for other people, and I don't think that's life either. I think you have to make a conscious decision of what kind of life you'd like to have, and be willing to deal with the sacrifices that you have to make to reach the destination you'd like to go to as well.
I love that. And was there a someone or a stranger or even a friend or even a random encounter that showed you kindness in some way or form and helped shift your perspective during that time, other than your wife, obviously?
I'd say every day.
Really?
I meet so many people. And when I was much younger, I had this simple way to network, which was uncomfortable at the beginning, but I forced myself to meet three new people every day.
Mm.
So I would go out of my way. So at the end of the day, I'd be like, shit, I need to like say hi to some random people, right? So I forced myself to build my network and consciously think about who I wanted to connect with, but make sure that I nurtured it properly. And throughout that time period, I met some very positive people and met very negative people as well. Obviously, when you go through trauma, you also can attract trauma to a certain extent, right? And also, many times you have people that like to bring you down instead of build you up.
Mm.
And so, as my daughter goes through, um, you have people that want to add value to your life and bring that light that you need. And then you have those that don't. But I would say that every single day, there's at least one person that makes me smile. There's at least one person that makes me realize how lucky I am. And there's at least one person that helps me think about how I can improve personally and professionally. So if you're aware of your surroundings, it could be the person sweeping the street in front of your house. It could be a person that you have a meeting with, or it could be a stranger that becomes a friend that you meet at a start over movement event in Dublin. So have to keep your eyes open, your ears open too.
100%, absolutely. And yeah, I have to say, having met you there and spent some time with you, had a few drinks with you and dinner with you, I have to say, definitely friend for life. So obviously now the homeless entrepreneur has been very successful. Tell us a little bit about that and tell us, how does your program turn someone from homelessness to hopeful and eventually empower them and to be entrepreneurial?
Well, basically, a homeless entrepreneur, we're not magicians, right? Like we don't come in the room and tap someone on the shoulder and be like, your life's changed. Even though people that watch social media think you can get a clean shave like you have right now and a haircut and everything's good. But you still have to get that clean shave probably once a week, or sooner, and the haircut once every month or two, right? So what you have to keep in mind is we can help people that are willing and able to participate in the process. So we have projects that attract people from around the world, like the Great Walk. We're doing this summer. It's more than 1 million steps for over 1 million homeless people. Then you have, for example, the programs. You have three different programs. You have the Helpline, you have the Voices program, and you have the help program, right? So the helpline, people literally call us from around the world, anywhere from the States to Argentina, Africa, literally everywhere. And they're looking for unidentified resources. We try to connect them. Afterwards, what we do is we have the Voices program and they tell their story. So they have 1 minute to say, hi, my name's Doug. I'm living in Dublin. Currently sleeping on the couch of a friend. And my dream is to get paid speaking, right? And so then we let them tell their story. And then we try to connect them to our community. And that really creates a filter, because what we want to do is we want to give them a voice. It's not about us speaking for them. It's about us creating a platform for them to have their true presence and really shine themselves. So after that, they have the opportunity to be in the help program. The help program are for those that want to be active working citizens. And they have network support anywhere from professional development, health, housing, finance, legal, sales, communication, mentor, and training, right? So one of our partners is IBM, so they get free training from IBM Skills Builder. So really, it's like a master's, so people don't have any excuses. What's your problem? Let's focus on it and let's improve. So those that are willing to participate are always successful. And we also have to understand and respect that everybody has a different idea of where they'd like to go and how far. And so how we define success doesn't necessarily mean that's how other people do, but we accompany people as far as they would like us to.
Yeah, I love that. And it is, yeah, it's very unique to individuals of what they see as their success or their future. Talking of uniqueness, is there anything else that's kind of unique about your approach compared to the traditional homelessness services?
Well, I mean, first of all, it's an empowerment based, and
Mm.
most social services are assistance based: food, clothing, coffee, housing, etc. Um, so just looking at the helpline, it's bi-directional. Normally helplines are one way, right? You have a problem, you contact them. But we have an opportunity to reach out to the people that have contacted our helpline. So it's bi-directional. So I do think that's innovative in a very simple way. The Voices program is unique because most homeless organizations don't really give their community a voice. Instead of seeing them speak, like if you look at any speakers at these big platforms, they'll have a pin, right? Like the SDG pin, and then they shine in their suit and they tell their story. But if you look at large NGOs, normally you have like a blanket over their community and you see how their logo gets bigger and bigger and bigger, right? So we make the homeless beneficiaries the protagonists in the Voices program. And then the help program is unique because we find a way to connect people around the world digitally and also in person to help uplift the community. And this is not normal. Normally, you'll have mayors complain because they don't have enough resources. I've never heard a mayor say they have too many resources, right? So in cities, let's just say they can't find the resources they have, but the world is much bigger than that city. So the way that we network and bring people together, I would also say is unique. And we just aim to inspire others through the stories of the individuals we help. You know, even looking at the Start Over movement event with Marco Robinson, there are two people that reached out to us because of that event. One is in the process of entering the help program, and the other one has already entered. So, and that wasn't long ago. So you have to keep in mind, one thing I think we do is when I go speak, you know, when we were at the event, I think there were about 120 people in the room because it was also the end of the day. There were many more at the beginning, right? But I had 6 chairs at the front, and I told people to stand up if they'd experienced homelessness before and come to the front. And to most people's surprise, there were 12 people, not 6, that came down. So they doubled the capacity of the chairs that we had. And then you know, we listened to a song called Dublin by Guillaume Binet, who's a composer we work with, and it's called Dublin. And they closed their eyes and they listened to a piece that we created to understand how Dublin addresses homelessness through music. And we asked them to imagine a world without homelessness, and specifically their city. And there's a beautiful response to that. And then I also asked, can you imagine a world without homelessness? And people like, nah, and no. And then can you imagine any homelessness for one person? Everybody agreed. So we have to go with what's imaginable to get to what's unimaginable. And that process is something I think we do quite well. Obviously, we're always looking for more funding so we can reduce the cost of doing that and increase our impact. But I do think that's something special to do.
Yeah, I love that. And one of the things that you talk a lot about is smart cities without homelessness are smarter cities.
Yeah.
Um, what does that truly look like, and what would a human-centered city look like to you?
Well, we talk about smart cities, right? And if I walk out of my building and there's a homeless person sleeping there, I do think it's representation of some kind of failed aspect of the system, right? So I think one thing is PR, like promoting smart cities, etc. Everything's good, but we do have to recognize how we can improve. So I believe that, if we're going to use that kind of terminology, there are beacons, call them beacons of hope and beacons of information. And if we listen to the beacons that we have in society of what's not working properly and what is working properly, then we can get better results as a society. And unfortunately, I would say that we're failing quite miserably right now, and homelessness is on the rise. So, we're walking more than 1 million steps because there are more than 1 million homeless people in Europe. In theory, 1.287. 000, and if it ends with the zero, it's probably not true. So it's an estimation, more or less, right? But as we improve the way we understand homelessness and other issues, we'll get more realistic data and we can come up with better solutions. So there's this thin line of making sure you have the right information so that way you can approach the right issues that you need to deal with.
Yeah, I love that. And you've obviously helped a lot of people. Have you got any good kind of case studies or stories that you could
Yeah,
share?
I mean, there are so many different case stories. We've helped more than 3,000 beneficiaries in programs, right? So I'll just give you a one from last summer, which I like. A guy named Eric Eklund, very nice guy, black guy from Colombia, who was left on the doorstep of a church and then adopted by a Swedish family. Obviously, he was the only black person in his class. He's got some really funny stories and pictures when he was younger, but he was adopted there, and then he came to Spain later on in life, and he was helping us as an advisor to speak in public. And he kind of fell off the side of the planet for like 6 months. And I ran into him at an event, and I said, "Hey, how you doing?" He said, "I'm all right. Let's speak." And so I spoke with him, and I was in Andorra at the time afterwards because I had to leave, and we were going on a small family vacation. And he's like, "Andrew, I've literally been eating like a palm full of rice every day since the beginning of the year." And I was like, "Well, the bad news is that you're eating a palm full of rice every day and you're experiencing homelessness. The good news is if you want, we can help you." And, the biggest thing people have to get over is their ego,
Mm.
right? It's a terrible thing to face. And I said, if you're happy and comfortable with it, call me and let me know within the next coming days, and we can start doing something you'd like to. And he called me back a few days later and he said, "I'd like to join the program." And he told his story for the first time. He got, well, I don't know how many thousand, like I think like 30,000 views to the post of him coming out of the homeless closet, if you will, and telling his story. So he basically woke up his entire network. And instead of being punished for a situation, he was rewarded. And there was a guy who who was in the process of doing a big deal in London. And he said, "I need someone to help me with my speech. How much do you charge?" And he normally charged like 500 a day. And he's like, "Okay, I'm gonna see what I can pull," because he wasn't pulling any money. He's like, "I'm gonna say 600, and then I'm gonna do that for a half day." So the guy's like, "Okay, cool. I'd like 10 days of your work."
Fantastic.
So he literally went from like zero to like 12,000. And then the thing was, he didn't realize when he sent the invoice that he had to pay for taxes if he didn't get paid before the time he was supposed to pay taxes. And if he didn't have the money, then it went into that. So then we gave him advice so he was able to do that properly. And he also walked with us from Orleans to Paris for the Summer Olympics, which was a beautiful experience. And he was out of his state of homelessness afterwards. And he also is teaching at a well-known university called IESE in Barcelona. And yeah, he's in a much better place. And that's he also found out, he did a DNA test and he found out that he has no Colombian blood, which he thought was really funny. So he thought he was Colombian his entire life, and he has no trace of that in his blood. But he actually has some Spanish blood, which is funny because that's where he ended up here. But that's just a funny story that goes along with it. But the reality is, he went from being homeless and hungry, but really hungry, to having a different kind of hunger, which is helping him grow professionally and back on his feet and inspiring others too. So that's just one example. There are many examples, and we just try to share the inspiration with others, so that way we can reduce the cost of ending homelessness through the people that we've been able to support.
Yeah, I love that. And you're a very good speaker. I've heard you speak, and I know you've spoken at things like the Economic Forum and everything like that. If you had 5 minutes to speak with a world leader today, what would you ask them to do differently in terms of poverty and homelessness?
Well, the first thing I would ask for them to be blunt, to give a shit, right? And less blunt, to care. And the I've had moments, I've spoken with world leaders there before, like the president of Spain, John Kerry, Christine Lagarde, etc. There's a long list of people I've spoken there, and normally you don't get 5 minutes, right? If you're lucky, you get 30 seconds, right? If you're really lucky, you get 3 minutes. And the most important thing that I would ask at the beginning is that they really gave me their attention
Mm,
when we were speaking,
mm,
and an opportunity to continue the conversation, right? Because you can't ask for more than that. They're people just like you and I, and they have their schedule and things to do. And who am I just to jump in and just shake up their entire agenda? So considering I'm not paying their salary, I probably won't. I have to make sure that there's a sincere connection that takes place. So if I had a moment, and I don't even need 5 minutes, I would just tell the person to really give me their attention for the time we're speaking, and the opportunity to continue the conversation within the next few months. And you have to make sure that what you ask for is something that they can give. So if they ask me to be a leader of any country, at that moment, I'm not ready.
yeah.
And if I ask them to change social policy and end homelessness in a different way, in that moment, they're not ready either. So respecting and empathizing who they are, where they're at, and what they're doing, I think I would just ask for the same respect on our side, and for them to truly listen, care, and do one concrete action that has the possibility of growing into something bigger and better.
Yeah, I love that. And you mentioned about asking them to listen. I think you might remember in my second speech in Dublin, I did say, is it okay if I tell you a little bit about me to the guys, always asking for permission rather than just going into it, because then automatically people listen more and automatically you're clicking their subconscious mind into to really focus in on what you're saying. So I love that. And in terms of that, you're obviously helping a lot of people, and 3,000 plus people is incredible. So from my heart to your heart, on behalf of mankind, thank you very much. And I know you're giving people who are stuck or invisible life a change in terms of what they're doing now. And do you see this role of kind of purpose playing a massive change in people by giving that sense of purpose?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it like this, homeless individuals are the minority, right? And the majority of people that have homes. So if you look at it like that, and you also understand that homeless people aren't invisible, society is blind, then if you work on curing the other part of society that is blind so they can see better through more knowledge, empathy, and interaction, you're going to get much more positive support into the system of what's going on. But you have to make sure that it's bi-directional. So
Mm.
it's really important to understand how we can educate both sides so that way there's trust again in collaboration.
Yeah.
That is the most important thing because you'll have one homeless entrepreneur. The first one, Marco, rest in peace. He I remember there's a special day in Barcelona. It's called San Jordi's. Okay, and we went to speak with two people. One is a guy named Eduardo Mendoza. I don't think he's going to be listening to this, so it's not a big deal. And another woman named Paula Raola. She has a certain attitude on television that people think is she's too aggressive and friendly and things like that, or it can be perceived to some audiences. And the other hand, you have the famous author. She's a politician or in the political world, and 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 then he, on the other hand, is a famous author and supposed to be very friendly. So when we went to go speak with him, Marco was a poet, and there's actually this is something I have here. This was like the cover, right? So he actually used a pen to stir his coffee because I told him he had to pay for his coffee with a poem, right? And we ended up publishing a book. But he had poems that he had written. He signed the poems and he was giving them to people. And the author didn't care at all about the poem that he was going to receive. He just wanted to sell his books. And so he fell from like up here to like way down here to Mark, and he was just shy. He didn't know how to deal with that. Yeah, and then we went to meet the other woman, and he's like, Andrew, no, don't introduce me to her. And I'm like, listen, she's friendly, like give her a chance. And then when he went to give her the poem, she's like, oh, thank you, that means so much to me. And she was sharing love and respect in that moment, and he was expecting the opposite. So she just went up here. So we turned the relationship, and it may be better for one person than the other, but the reality was seen by a real interaction. And
Mm.
we want real interactions to take place. And then you see who really you can connect with and how they can uplift you and you can uplift them. Because it's not about helping poor people because they're down there in the gutter, etc. No, they can teach you a lot about things that you don't know because many businessmen probably don't spend much time with their family. They
Mm.
probably don't do other things for themselves. So if there's a way to have that interaction that both learn and grow, that's when a true relationship takes place. And that's when you improve the social network of society as well too.
Yeah, I love that. In terms of your story and your journey, I know obviously you were coming out of another marriage, and that obviously led to then homelessness. And you said that now that your current wife now has been an absolute rock for you.
Yeah.
How did you meet this wonderful lady?
That would be at my friend. I have a friend named Nicky. He had a Peruvian restaurant, and he invited me to go to his birthday party.
I love.
And so I was with another friend of mine, Silvano, and because I was like, okay, fine, I'll go. And then there were some girls at the end of the bar where there's a big discussion of who looked at who first. I always say she did, she'll always say I did, but hey, it's a good story either way. And so I went over to speak with her, and it was funny because I said hi to the waiter who I knew, and he's like, "Let me introduce you to my sister." And so I ended up finding out that she was his sister, but that good memory from that. Obviously, I didn't go around telling anyone my story, and it was very difficult to explain that. But because of her kindness and big heart as well, it grew into something bigger. And the little lady that you saw go back and forth is my daughter. She's used to being on television, things like that, so she doesn't give it two thoughts. But yeah, it was Peruvian food still plays a key role in our life. I don't know if you have tried it, but it's quite good, and I'm lucky because she makes amazing food too.
No, I love that. And actually interlinked to that, I was going to ask, obviously she's brought a lot of joy as the two kids have as well. What's one surprising, joyful or funny moment from your journey that reminds you of the beauty in people?
That's a hard question. Um, I would probably just say every time my kids laugh and have fun,
Mm.
you know, because they remind you how good I have it. I
Yeah.
have very beautiful children, in all sense of the word, right?
Mm.
And even when you're having a terrible day, like they make it better.
Yeah.
So I would say kids and obviously wife too, because when you come home and it smells really good and there's amazing food and someone's smiling and excited to see you, it feels good too. So I would say those are the probably the most important things.
I love that. And is there anything else in terms of when you were homeless that taught you about resilience or your individual identity or your own self-worth?
Well, I mean, you have different moments, right? Like I remember the first time that I was in front of the train station in Barcelona and I slept out there. Um, the insecurity of not having a home is crazy.
Mm.
Like the the sound of something 50 meters away felt like it was half a foot from you, right, or half a meter away from you. So you
Mm.
can't sleep properly. I woke up at like 2:30 with this sensation, like I was just sweating, I had like really nervous, and I was hyperventilating, right? And so that lack of security is crazy. And when I woke up, I had to eat, but I had no money.
Mm.
And so I had to beg for the first, but like properly beg, which is like, I need something to eat. And it forced me to like go into this role of looking and feeling miserable to get money. And then I was able to finally get enough to have like a small breakfast at McDonald's. And it just like, it forced me to empathize with people because I think many times people play a role in their life because they think that's what gets the best results from the audience in front of them.
Mm.
And unfortunately, not everybody has the best audience in front of them. So I think that's probably one of the biggest things I learned, which was, you have to truly value those around you. Something I knew, but and just take care of each and every person you interact with
Mm.
as best as you can, but without expecting anything. And if you take care of your community takes care of you. And I've been taking care of my community more than normal for the last 10 years, and my community has done the same for me. And that's around the world. So, I always said, I don't ever want to feel like I'm homeless or it's not my home wherever I go. So I think traveling around the world forces me to understand how to feel at home. And I think that's something that really it sped up that process when I was humbled, when I couldn't. I mean, I'll give you an example. I was in the newspaper and I wanted to buy the newspaper because I had a big page and it was on the back page of the newspaper, which is quite important. And I had enough money to pay for the newspaper, but it was in literally pennies, 2 cent pennies, 5 cents, and 10 cents. And it was very frustrating and humbling and I don't know, emotional moment because I went to the kiosk to buy the newspaper with the money. And the guy there said, I'm not accepting this change. I had the amount, but he didn't want to accept the change. So my money wasn't good for him.
Wow.
And I exploded because when you're in that kind of situation, you're in like at your limit and you give literally like your last money. So that way you can buy something and you have enough. And they're like, that's not even good enough for you. I took the money, I tossed them at it, and I walked away. I was pissed.
Mm.
And it made me feel unhuman
Yeah.
because even though I had the resources, it wasn't good enough. And I think that can make and break many people. It forced me to keep working hard and figure out how to get out. But not everyone has that same moment. People commit suicide, people become depressed, and they become absent in life. And it's very hard. So you have some that survive and some that thrive, and some that don't thrive or survive. But that was a very hard moment because when you give the last or the best of what you have, and when it's not good enough, be it money, love, respect, or anything, it's a very hard thing to deal with.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, I think to experience that, I can imagine why, having met you now, why you are so humble. And I've seen you around other people and how you treat people. And I can see that you have a genuine care and empathy towards others. And I experienced it myself in our conversation. So, hats off to you, because I think often we turn our messes into messages or our, tragedies into triumphs to help others. And you are a thriving example of that. So I take my hat off in so many different ways. In terms of, what people who are listening now, um, what could they do today to help someone who might be struggling with homelessness, even in a small way?
I think the first thing is just try to have a normal conversation with the person. You know, don't try to save anyone's life in one day. Even imagine like a consultant, like going, okay, I'm going to go in and change your entire business with 1 hour or 5 minutes or 10 minutes, right? Um, Obviously, you can help inspire that change, but it takes more time. Obviously, you can have a click, but there's a lot of work to be done. So, my thing would be first have a normal conversation with the person without any expectation.
Hmm.
So, build a normal relationship like you would with any other human being that you wanted to be friends with. And if that takes place, search for other organizations like ours or others that exist to see how they can get more support because nobody is going to help one person by themselves.
Hmm.
It's impossible. Like it takes, in our experience, it takes about 30 people to help one person become uplifted throughout that year. And if you have kids, as you do, you know that it takes many people to raise children properly.
Hmm. Yeah, that's amazing. And in terms of the organization now,
Yeah.
just tell us how can people support the organization and how can they get in touch with you or the organization as a whole?
Well, I would say the most important thing is for people to ask themselves what they're willing to contribute. Is it a donation, which helps us lower the cost and increase the impact? Is it pro bono service, like a law firm that wants to help create documentation to provide greater access to the homeless community? Is it volunteering? Is it someone like yourself that says, "Hey, I'd love to introduce you to my audience for my podcast"? Um, it's it's really thinking about uh, how you can contribute in a way that's satisfying and truly adds value to the other person. So
Mm,
I would just tell people, think about if you have more money than time, donate money. If you have more time than money, donate your time. If you have knowledge that you just want to get off your chest, or you just have the sensation of bringing people together or giving them a voice, do that. But do you and give your best version. Don't give the leftovers of who you are, but give the best part. And you'll realize that that small part of the very best version of who you are will help the other person get the very best of who they are as well. And we just try to make those transactions, if you will, take place and become real relationships that go beyond our work because it becomes the communities.
yeah, I love that. And I know obviously homelessness is your thing, mental health is mine. And I spent 3,000 hours during the pandemic and still do it all the time now, helping people in terms of charity. And I have
Yeah.
to say, giving to others is one of the greatest gifts that you can give to yourself. To be able to come home and look at yourself in the mirror now, I suspect you look at yourself and go, you know what, you're all right. And there's so many people suffering out there with mental health, with mindset issues, with self-esteem issues. Well, I tell you what, go out there and copy Andrew or myself in terms of giving to others in some way or form, and you will make yourself feel better. And I've lived that, you've lived that, we know that. So if anybody's listening to this, go out there and try it. Get involved with Andrew, help him in some way or form, and really experience it. And you might just find a little tinkle in your heart start to light up, and a bit of love come in as well. So, yeah. So just tell everybody, in terms of, before my final question, which I like to ask, but tell everybody, what's the internet site? What's the website for the people to get?
It's homelessentrepreneur.org. And my telephone number, which is public, is +34 697 877 089. It's quite easy to reach out to me. I would just tell people to connect with me on LinkedIn or wherever they would like to, but I respond and do so within 24 hours. My response rate is quite quick, as long as I'm able to. And I would just say, reach out and get the conversation going. I just had a conversation with a guy named Rohan, who was with PMI, Project Management Institute, and we have a call on Friday at 5 because of it. So I like to interact, have a real conversation, and see what we can do. So I would just tell people, please reach out to us. And obviously I would tell everyone that I strongly recommend that they subscribe to your YouTube channel and they share your video with everyone they know as well, because I think you're doing a wonderful job. And as many people like myself that have the opportunity to speak, it's also a special moment too. So thank you for bringing me into your community.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure, and I'm so glad to have met you. And if this podcast and all the TV shows that you've been on and radio shows and speeches that you've done were put aside, and it was your legacy speech, you're 90 years of age, and you're speaking in front of a stage of 10,000 people, and I gave you that stage, and then I beamed it out as the final thing on this podcast to the 8 billion people around the planet, what message or legacy would you like to leave?
That's really hard, because when I'm in front of the stage, I think the most important part is the audience, right? And if I was 90 years old and I had to be in front of 10,000 people, I think what I would probably say and do, if it was for my legacy, last thing is I would say thank you. It's time for me to go home and spend time with my family. And I hope you guys do the same.
Yeah, I love that. It's amazing, isn't it? So many people like us sometimes go out there and we try and save the world and save many strangers, but sometimes it starts with your own self and the closest and nearest, dearest around you as well. So I love that. And, Andrew, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. I wish you every success going forward.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And like I said, it's just the beginning. As I said when we spoke previously, one of the best moments and highlights for me was building a friendship with you as well. I'm at the start of our movement. So I'm sure there will be more opportunities for us to speak together in a podcast, on stage, and move around. So thank you for the trust and the ability to, the opportunity to be able to speak here, and looking forward to the next conversation.
100%. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to Andrew Funk on Inspirational People, Inspirational Stories. I'll be back next week with another inspirational guest. In the meantime, if you need to get in touch, please contact me at doug@dougdgordon.com. From all of us here in the team of the show, I wish you a truly inspirational week and look forward to speaking to you next time. Bye for now.